Hello, folks. Welcome to Queen's Storytellers, a show presented by Queen's Theater. I am your host, David Lawson, and as we have on the previous installments in this series, we are going to have 5 writers and performers from various disciplines of writing and performing coming on and performing true stories that actually happened to them for you good folks watching at home. As always, really excited about the 5 performers we have for you this week, so let's get right to them. Our first performer this week was recently named by Time Out New York magazine as an LGBTQ POC comedian we are obsessed with right now, Calvin Cato. Calvin Cato is going to be performing a story of doing comedy on the road and encountering hate. After Calvin Cato is going to be Gail Thomas, a voiceover actor. Most notably, she performed on Beavis and Butthead. Gail Thomas is going to be performing a story of her father's death. After Gail Thomas is Rebecca Seidel, who works as an audio producer for Marvel Entertainment. Yes, that's Marvel Entertainment. She is going to be performing a story of coming across the blog of her gross high school boyfriend. Coming up after Rebecca Seidel is Vishal Vaidya, who was in the original Broadway company of the Tony-nominated musical Groundhog Day. Vishal is going to be performing a story of being in India and playing a particular Indian board game. Our final performer is Becky McDonald, who is a theater director and a high school theater teacher in Dallas, Texas. She is going to be performing a ghost story involving her mother, who is still alive. You'll find out when you get to that. So excited as always, folks, to be presenting these 5 writers and performers performing these 5 wonderful stories for you this week. And if you enjoy this installment of Queen's Storytellers, then go to queenstheater.org. You can watch the other installments of this series there. You can go to Facebook and give a good old like to Queen's Theater. That's theater with an R-E. Queen's Theater on Facebook. Folks, I hope you enjoy these stories as much as I enjoyed sitting on Zoom and watching these performers staring to the camera, much like I'm doing right now, and performing these stories. And I have to tell you, if it's any indication, I think the feelings that I got sitting there as a producer as they performed these stories to me as an audience of one, these stories really have been infectious these last few weeks. I really get the feeling that you folks at home are feeling the same things I was feeling, laughing at the same things I was laughing at, and I think that's just wonderful. So I'm your host, David Lawson. Please enjoy this episode of Queen's Storytellers.
So in addition to storytelling, I also do stand-up comedy. And sometimes you take some of the gigs that are not necessarily what we would call the best. So this story takes place, sadly, not long enough ago. My friend had suggested that I do this gig with him, and it was a gig that he had done before that he said it was a super fun gig in a really great place, and it's relatively close within driving distance of New York. And, you know, afterwards there's a bar nearby that you can always go to afterwards and get like a bunch of free / very cheap drinks. And I said, you know what? Sure, I'll do it. I'm in. I have a car. I have a license. I can do this. So me, my friend, who I'll call Adam, I take another friend who I'll call Bobby. And me, Adam, and Bobby, we go to this place. It was set in Pennsylvania. And theoretically, I thought it was north of the Mason-Dixon line, but I quickly learned that that was incorrect. So we go to this town. The town is called Easton, Pennsylvania. And we get to the venue, and the venue is a bar. Like just straight up a bar, which that's never a surprise. For many of us performers, we're used to performing in bars or laundromats or barbershops. Like it just gets really weird sometimes. But we go into this bar, and there's a thing that I'm noticing about the bar, which is that the bar is very white, like very uncomfortably white. And you know, there's different degrees of white people. There's like, you know, there's not, I don't want to say good white, that sounds like ecru, but there's like, you know, like white people where you're like, okay, this is cool. Like, you know, clearly you voted for Obama. And then there's the kind of white people where, oh boy, you would vote for like a zombie Reagan. Like, this is scary. And it was that kind of white. again, I try not to judge. A gig's a gig. Listen, I've been to Maine. I know white. So I was like, let's go. We're going to do this. It'll be fine. Now, one of the things I noticed is that the bar has a sign and things they don't allow. And, there are normally signs that are like no shirt, no shoes, no service. But this bar had very, I would say, suggestive signs. And the sign that was all the notes was, it was literally no baggy white jeans, no fitted baseball caps, no do-rags. And for me, we know that that's coded language for no Black people. So I'm starting to get a little bit more concerned. But again, I'm like, well, my friend has done this gig before. My friend is biracial. And so I assume, like, you know what? Like, maybe this is a weird leftover from like the previous regime who owned this bar. I'm just trying to lie to myself, make sure everything's okay. So I get there, I talk to the booker. The booker seems very nice, very heavily tattooed. So I'm like, that's a good sign usually. And then I talk to the host, and the host has just like a flotilla of notes and no real plan as to how to host a show. And in fact, he asked, "Hey, can you host?" And I said, "No, because you're the host. That's your job. My job is just to perform." And so he goes, "Okay, no, don't worry. I'll pull it together. I'm going to look through like my whole manifesto of notes, and I'm going to pull together a set." And I say, "Whew, okay, this is going to be fine. It's going to be great." I get to the stage area, and I say area very loosely because it was literally just like a patch of floor that they marked off that was right next to the bathroom. And so I'm like, okay, we're going to be performing right in front of the bathroom. There's a pool table that's like within the area where the audience is. And I'm like, well, that's going to limit seating. And the music is still playing. They just turned it down, but not off. So I'm like, I'm really not sure what's going to happen here. But again, I'm just going to give it a chance. So the show starts an hour later than it's supposed to. The audience collects. And the audience is sitting there. And again, the audience, again, very zombie Reagan white. And the host starts the show, and he immediately starts the show off by going, "I hope you're not a PC audience," which is aggressive. And then he tells a joke where he uses the N-word, like the full ER N-word. And so I'm really like, uh-oh, like, am I going to have to give a TED Talk? Like, what's happening here? I left a PowerPoint in the car just in case, but I don't really know what's going to go on here. And at least to their credit, like there are some people who are laughing, and then there are people who are not laughing. And I'm like, okay, so there are enough like people who are not with this, but also there are people who are very with this, and I'm concerned. He finishes his set, and then the comic who goes up after me is someone who we don't know, and his only joke is "all dicks are ugly," and that's all he says. He runs throughout the bar shouting "all dicks are ugly," and I'm like, well, this is not really good prop comedy, but do you? And after that, my friend Adam, who he's biracial, he comes up and he says, well, my dick isn't ugly. And one of the bad white people goes, "We don't want to hear about your dick." And I was like, oh, this seems very pointed right now. Not sure what's happening. So Adam finishes his set. It doesn't go that well. And he's done. Then my friend Bobby comes up. And when Bobby comes up is when people decide that they want to use the bathroom. So Bobby is trying to tell his set as people are going in and out of the bathroom. One of the women goes to the bathroom, then comes back to the stage area, tries to take the microphone from Bobby and starts telling really bad, like those bad, like road jokes that you would see in like crappy magazines. It was like those jokes that are like, literally one of the jokes was like, "What do you call a woman with no arms and no legs?" Carrie, like stuff like that. And it's horrifying. And so now I'm supposed to go up last. And so I asked the booker, I said, "This has been kind of a weird show, right?" And the booker's like, "Yeah, I'm really sorry. I swear it's not like this." And I was like, "I just need to know what's going on just so that I know before I can get on stage." And he says, "I'm really sorry. I know this is really weird. It's because there are a lot of white power affiliates in the room." And this is where I really pause. Because, first of all, let's break down the phrase white power affiliate. Okay? Don't add words after white power like that makes it better. Like, that's crazy. Like you wouldn't be like, "Oh, this is like an NBC affiliate." Like, that's not the same. That's craziness. Like, are you just like the Diet Coke of the KKK? Like, what does that mean? I'm very worried now. So now I'm like, okay, this is very concerning. I just want to perform now. And I was like, can I immediately get paid after the set is over? Because I don't want to be here anymore. So Bobby finishes. I get up, I do my set, and it's 15 minutes, which is a long time to have to humor racists. And I, pulled it together. Some people laughed, some people did not. It was done, and I finally was like, okay, I'm glad this is over. Now I can just go get the money and we can leave. And so I go outside just to like wait outside because I was like, I don't want to be in there. And then I want to go back in. And as I try to go back in, I am blocked from going back in because a bar fight has broken out between the head of the White Power affiliates and the bartender. And it is a violent fight. Like apparently someone took a pool cue and smashed it over one of the guy's faces. Like it's just pandemonium. And so I see the head of the White Power affiliates come out with his face cut up, like very bloodied. And he's yelling all kinds of slurs, like you N-words and you F-words and all of this and all of that. And meanwhile, I'm still like, well, I mean, I really need to get paid because like I did pay like 2 tolls like to get here. So like, I really can't leave without the money. Sorry. And so I still wait, and we still cannot wait until the police come and the bartender cleans up the blood. And then finally we can get the money that we were promised. And we get our money. And at the end of it, Adam goes, hey, do you still want to check out that bar where we can get the free drinks? And I was like, absolutely not. Let's go home. And the moral of the story is don't just take any gig. Thank you guys. I'm Calvin Cato. Thank you so much.
As the plane is landing, I look out to a familiar sight. The long prairie land, the big open sky, and the buildings with so much space between them. Oklahoma really is in the middle of nowhere. Growing up there, I always thought that the stork made some sort of terrible mistake. Somebody like me doesn't belong in Oklahoma. I'm too much of an artist. I'm too much of a dreamer. I couldn't wait to get out. It took a lot longer than I expected. My parents paid for college, so as long as they paid, I stayed. But now I live in New York City, and I just come back for holidays, like November 2018, Thanksgiving. This visit's going to be different. I walk into the family house, and the living room doesn't have much furniture. And I walk into my parents' bedroom, and there's no furniture in there at all. The previous month, my sister and brother-in-law moved my mom and dad into assisted living. Dad's breathing and his mobility issues got so bad that he needed help. And Mom is very clear, I'm not a nurse. She always says that she was going to die in the house, but she also says that Dad's her brain. So they finally moved. And I'm excited to see their new place because I've heard good things and I can't wait to see them. I'm also excited to be staying in the house for the first time by myself. I can finally just cut cheese and leave it out without any commentary. I can have dishes in the sink. I can rummage through all kinds of drawers and just wander around till late at night. But first, I got to go to assisted living and see their place. I walk in the door of their 1-bedroom apartment, and there's my dad in his green leather chair with his newspaper in his hands and the TV news on. And Mom is not sitting still. She's walking around restlessly. Same parents, different location. We get Dad's okay to go to bingo, and I'm really thrilled. It's Mom's first time to do it, and she needs to meet people. And she wins. We win some money, and she's able to keep track of the numbers, which is also really awesome. I go home that night after a nice dinner and rummage around and off to sleep. Around 3 a.m., the phone rings, my cell phone, and Mom's on the other end. She sounds tense and nervous, and she tells me that Dad's breathing's really bad and I need to get over there. So I do. I drive over and we take Dad to the ER, and he fights it, man, for 3 weeks. I think for us. But we finally lose him, and it's time. You know, I'm relieved. We're devastated. We're numb, but I am relieved that he's not in suffering anymore. It's time. And it's all about Mom now. So all 3 of us, I have a brother and a sister. None of us live in Oklahoma City. So we're texting each other constantly all day long. Things like, Mom says she wants to move back to the house. Change the subject, she'll forget about it. Or she says she's really dizzy today. Do you know what those meds might be? Can you send me a picture of the bottle? I'll go this weekend if you go the next weekend. All kinds of things like that. And I start to spend more and more time in Oklahoma. I see my high school friends, my grade school friends more than my New York City friends. I have lots of Mexican food. And I spend a lot of time with mom. It's kind of nice because back in Oklahoma, I live alone and I don't have a dog. I don't have a boyfriend, nothing. So, and I'm pretty good at empathy. So I make these TV schedules for her so that she can find her favorite shows because the DirecTV is way too complicated. And that's what Dad used to do. So I just make it simple. I put down when Blue Bloods is on and where the Hallmark channel is and Law and Order, lots of Law and Order. So that works. And, then I take her on one of the visits to her neurologist appointment. It's the second follow-up, and we get the news that we had expected. She's got early stage dementia, and he forbids her to drive, which is devastating for her. And she admits it's time for her to move to Denver to be closer to my sister. So now it's all about getting the house ready. Oh my gosh, we tag team that as well. And there's one weekend when my brother and sister and I are all there together. It's like the photo weekend, and we've got all the photos from all of our life experiences on the dining room table. My brother gets boxes from Hobby Lobby, and we have a different box, like one for 2001 to 2003 and the late 1999. We didn't take so many pictures back then. There's lots of pictures when my nieces and nephews are born, and a few random photos from my sister's first two husbands. And I find pictures of me with my dog and when I'm bald from cancer, and I'm finding pictures of like my high school yearbooks and the programs from my theater shows that I did in high school, because I left all that stuff there. And I'm finding programs from the Fiddler on the Roof and JB and all the plays that I used to do. It's actually kind of fun, and we take turns when we're there at different weekends. My sister takes care of she likes to work with the fancy stuff and the big bags of Dad's receipts, endless receipts in paper bags, and my brother deals with the termite inspector and selling the car. And one night I stay up until 3:00 in the morning going through Mom and Dad's medicine cabinet. There's like 15 bottles of itch cream and 13 bottles of allergy medicine and other things that vaginal cream, like way more vaginal cream than I ever wanted to see. And I can throw that away. But for some reason, I can't throw away. I leave like one of everything as if somebody's going to move back into the house, even though I know that no one is. And moving weekend is weird. My niece is there packaging Mom's favorite red glasses, and my sister's got the dining room table because she can take all the big stuff with her to Denver, and I just take little stuff because I live in New York City and you can't get a dining room table in there. It's Mom moved to Denver in January of 2020 this year, and I guess it was March, the first weekend of March, she moved out of assisted living into my sister's house, which my sister never wanted, but thanks to COVID, we want to be extra careful. I've been spending a lot of time alone in my apartment on my blue velvet couch, but it's a little different than it was before, because now when I look at the mantle, I see my little horse statue, Misty, with the crack down its back, and it's three-legged, and a little broken chain that comes out. And that sits right next to the Buddha head that I got in Nepal that also has a broken ear. When I look at the window, I see my the first painting I ever made in my art class, which has the yellow and green tulips, and it's propped in my window that looks into the brick wall, actually, of the building behind us. And I see a picture on the mantle of me at age, I don't know, maybe 18 months, with my furrowed brow, with that familiar staring into space look on my face. The original artist, the original seeker, the pure one. And I think it feels nice to have my childhood stuff next to my adult stuff, to have the parts of me connected in one place. It's not a childhood home, but it's my home, and it's what I've got now. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. So somewhere deep inside, the brain cells in my brain, I have what I think of as the brain equivalent of a filing cabinet. Picture like one of those filing cabinets from the 80s that every office has that's kind of collecting dust. That's how I'm picturing it. And inside this filing cabinet is a series of folders, each one labeled very meticulously with the name of someone I've dated. And I keep these folders for every person I've dated, no matter how long we dated or how deeply we connected. Every person gets a folder. And these folders are basically living documents that I add to whenever I find out something new about that person. Whenever I get a new piece of intel, whether it's a Facebook post, a tweet, a secondhand story that I hear from somebody else. I really am just constantly updating these folders in my mind. And I think I do this because I'm a person who just likes having all of the information in front of me. I like documenting things, keeping track of where people are at, no matter what role they played in my life. I like just having all the documentary evidence. And the first folder I have in this filing cabinet is the first person I dated. And also he marks the first time I really started keeping documentary evidence of my own life, which is a diary I started keeping in high school, the summer before my junior year of high school. And that summer I went on this trip called Trek West, which was a teen youth group trip organized by this teen youth group organization called BBYO. And basically what BBYO does is organize these trips for young Jewish teens to experience a place together and connect with each other and, connect with their Jewish roots or whatever. That's what it is on paper. In practice, it's these trips are places where a group of several dozen young Jews are all on a bus together and are kind of like eyeing each other for first kiss potential. In my case, Trek West, it was a trip, several dozen of us, to the western part of the United States. So we went through California, Nevada, Utah, and Arizona. And when I was about to go on this trip, I had never done anything like this before. I had never spent a lot of time away from home, and I was just really super excited to meet all these new people, make new friends, go to this new place, kind of get outside my bubble a little bit. And so with that in mind, I decided to keep this diary, which I have here all earmarked for all of you. And I was just really, really excited about this trip. And so I really decided to document really moment for moment, word for word, what went down. And just to show you how seriously I took this commitment, I'm just going to read you the very first few lines, which are from when I was on the airplane, and I decided it would be a good idea to really detail literally every single moment of this airplane trip, 6 hours from New York to California. So just to give you a sense of my writing style, which gets really embarrassing later on, but right now it's just minorly embarrassing. June 28th, 2009, flight 641, gate 5, seat 7A. It's time to spread my wings. For the next 6 hours, I will stare out of this microscopic window. I love window seats, ... Then I just go on to describe literally every passing thought I have on this entire airplane ride, which I won't take you into. But then it goes on. Later that night, I come back to the diary after I've met everyone, after we've gotten settled, and things have taken a turn. Where before I was really earnest and excited to meet these new people, something had happened where I realized this trip might not go the way I thought it would go. 10:39 p.m. One word, exhausted. Better word, awkward. That's the only way to describe today. So many awkward silences, so many desperate moments in which everyone is fishing around for something to say. Something, anything to fill in that silence. And so what this turned into from here is me just feeling really self-conscious and out of place. And I wasn't connecting with anybody else on this trip. And all my hopes for meeting all these new people and really coming out of my shell just kind of went out the door. And I just felt myself on the periphery of every group of friends that was forming. And I just really wasn't feeling like I had a place here. It got really bad. At one point we went to an Oakland A's baseball game, and I just went into the bathroom and called my mom crying because I just really couldn't connect with anyone. And it just really wasn't going the way I dreamed and the way I'd outlined in this diary in the first few pages. So what happens after that is I detail all these I detail every place we go and everything I see, but there's this kind of undercurrent of sadness, right? But then things take a turn again. And this is also where things take a turn a little bit for the cringy for me, but you're gonna bear with me as I bear with myself as I read you what happens next. So this is from July 6, 2009. I'll take a moment here to talk about something I have not yet mentioned, boys. Since I'm extremely lacking in social skills, apparently, it's unlikely that I'll go out with anyone on this trip. I had felt no real attraction for anyone for a while. And then there was Nick. Nick is really tall, with curly dark hair and bluish eyes. He's not amazingly hot or anything. He's really quiet. He was pretty much silent at the beginning of the trip, but he's recently opened up a little. He also plays guitar and is in a band. And then this is, I always seem to fall for guys who A, have curly hair, B, are Jewish, C, are smart, and D, play guitar. This guy is E, all of the above. And we always seem to end up in the same place. The only problem, I barely talk to him. What a surprise. And so this is where this diary takes another turn. Before it was all about my sadness and loneliness to being just full steam ahead, huge crush on this guy, Nick. In retrospect, Nick is what I would call now a guitar guy. You know the kind of guy I'm talking about. The person who brings out his guitar at social gatherings and just waits for the people to flock to him and gather around him. But what Nick also was, and what I would call this now, is he was a brooder. The type of guy who likes just being dark and mysterious and kind of revels in that. Which in retrospect, big red flag, but didn't see that at the time. I was all for it. He was also, and this is the third thing I'll say about him, is this was a Jewish trip. We all came from Jewish families, but he just loved, the one thing, he was a pretty quiet guy, but he just loved talking about the fact that he was atheist. And there's nothing wrong, nothing wrong with being atheist at all. But he would just used it as a thing to talk about himself and add to his mysterious quality and pose himself as this intellectual. And so anytime discussions of religion come up, he was like, well, I'm an atheist. Again, red flag, but first, big crush, didn't really get there in realizing that. So I spent the next week or so pining after him. And I think it's because, I was lonely and having a crush gave me something to focus on. It gave me a sense of hope that maybe this could turn around in some way, even though I didn't really think anything would happen. But then things take another turn. July 14, 2009, where I wrote, holy crap, he likes me back. So at this point, something had shifted. And there was this moment where we're in Zion National Park in Utah. And he comes up to me in the middle of the recreation area. And so I'm just gonna read you a bit of how this went down. So what do you wanna do, he asked me. Everything was smooth from there. We played volleyball and foosball. We sat by the swings and watched everyone else. Then after a while, he looked at me and said, I'm bored, let's walk. We wandered all over the grounds. I remember the first thing he asked me, what do you think about fire? That pretty much sums up all of our conversations that night. Random yet profound. We talked about the universe. We talked about quantum physics. We talked about other people. And so this was our first big conversation together. And when I realized, oh, there's something here. And so we did not kiss at that moment, but it did happen later that night after curfew when we all snuck out and we kissed in the back of a golf cart and it was wonderful. And then we ended up being together for the rest of the trip. And we actually kept on dating throughout that summer, the summer before my junior year of high school and his too. And over the course of the summer, he lived in New Jersey and I lived in New York, so we would get together on the weekends. And it was fun, but I also, the red flags were building up and it became pretty clear that this guy was an asshole in various ways. But it was my first relationship and I was, figuring things out, still pretty insecure myself. And I just thought maybe this is how relationships were, or this is how all guys were. And so I didn't really, put together, the thoughts didn't form in my brain oh, this guy is an asshole. But, in the back of my mind, things were creeping up. At the end of that summer, he ended up dumping me over AIM, as one is wont to do in 2009 in high school. And he said, it was, school was starting, and he said it was because of, that long New York, New Jersey distance. So it was just going to be too much for us to stay together in high school. And, I was pretty devastated in that moment. It was my first relationship and it was ending, and what was going to happen from here. But our breakup marked the moment where I started keeping that first folder, that first kind of set of evidence and intel about the first person who I dated and who met something to me in that way. And yeah, I would kind of call it stalking, but I basically, from the moment we broke up, would keep kind of tabs on him, like look at his Facebook, look at what he was doing online. And I, found some pretty wild things. And, this was also the first moment where I started thinking about something I think about still a lot to this day, which is, what happens when you connect with somebody for a really concentrated period of time, and then you go your separate ways. What happens in the aftermath of that? What are the different paths you take, and how widely can they diverge? And I haven't spoken to Nick in the decade plus since we broke up, but in the month or so after we broke up, I did find a blog that he kept, which it's something I still look back on whenever I need a good laugh or to remind myself that I'm in a better place now. And I'm just going to read you a really short entry, which I also just liked thinking about in juxtaposition with this very detailed, very earnest diary I kept at this time. So the blog is called He Tells the Truth. And his bio says, about me, Nick, I'm 16. I hate the way our earth works, and I dislike many people on it. If you'd like to leave a positive comment, either comment directly on the blog or go to my Facebook. That's his bio. And then really quick, I'm just gonna read you a little sampling of the type of writing we're talking about here. One of his entries is called The Fight Inside of Me. And keep in mind, this is, pretty soon after we split ways. It begins. This note is about fighting, physically, mentally, emotionally, and logically. Here's what I think. And then he goes on to outline the different types of fighting that he thinks about. And the last bit is headlined Logic. My God, how I love logic. It's what I live and breathe. Humans are entirely too emotional as creatures. I strive to remove that from myself. When I allow my emotions to control me, I find things and people unexpectedly breaking in my hands. It's bad. I always resort to the facts, and if I don't know a fact, I admit it. I don't pretend to know something about a topic I have no idea about. I would suggest taking a page from my book in this case. Illogicality. Use it on me, and I will kill you and call you a girl. Don't be stupid. I hate stupid people. And then the one that really puts the icing on the cake is a post he has that's titled The Opposite Species. And this one, looking back, is it's pretty vile. And it begins. I'm going to rant now about the female species and their downfalls. If you like this note, feel free to tell me so. And pass it along. Just give me credit. And then it's a numbered list, numbered 1 through 11, on things he hates about women. The first one is self-confidence. This is probably my biggest issue I have with girls, he writes. As a good rule of thumb, the most beautiful women think badly of themselves, while the ugly ones think the opposite. Mirrors are incredibly effective at showing who you are. They won't lie. And a few others. Teasing is one. He says, this is just ridiculous. It's not fair to drag us around like you do. Flirting should mean that you're interested, not that you want to feel good mentally. And talking to us about girl-only topics is another one of my favorites that he rants about. He writes, I don't mean about your period. Most of you understand we don't want to hear it. I mean about chick flicks, who's dating who, shoes, makeup, crappy music, the list goes on. We are not interested. Now, most of you are pretty good about this, so I don't have much to complain about, but there are still some of you. You know who you are. And it just really gets worse from there. This guy, looking back, really dodged a bullet, I would say. And when I'm looking back at these blog entries he was writing, at the same time, I look back at the diary I was keeping at this time. And specifically, I look back at the night we broke up and what I wrote after I kind of processed some of the sadness. And while I look back at his blog and I think about just how utterly absurd it is and how glad I am that the relationship didn't extend beyond the summer, I look back at my diary and I'm just really proud of who I was back then, and how I processed things, and how I decided to move forward. So I want to close by reading the end of this diary entry from the night that Nick dumped me over Aim. I wrote, I'm past being hurt. I'm past trying to figure out how I feel about him. I might be alone relationship-wise, but I'm stronger now. And I have my friends who will always be there for me unconditionally. So much to be grateful for. It's time to live without regrets, to be who I want to be, and to appreciate what I do have without misgivings. I like who I am, and I can strengthen myself by knowing that for sure. I'm going to devote myself to my own intentions now and live without inhibitions. I don't need a boyfriend for that. Sure, I might be lonely sometimes, and if I find a boy who understands me, great. But in the meantime, I have myself, my family, and my friends. What more could I ask for? It's almost Rosh Hashanah. Time for a new year, a clean slate, and a fresh new page. I feel pretty good right now, and it's going to stay that way. Thank you.
Hi, this is a story about finding an Indian board game in the middle of a small town in Morocco. So I was studying abroad in Cairo, neither of those two places, and on my spring break, I went to Morocco. I spent 3 weeks there traveling, and we went all over, and I was in Fez, and there were I was staying in this house with this couple, and I was couch surfing. If you don't know what that is, it's this website through which you can crash on people's couches for free. So the couch in Fez that I was staying in happened to be in this giant traditional Muslim home where there are rooms sort of all around, and in the middle there's this giant open area. And the night before I was leaving to go elsewhere, they had like a rave of sorts. It was really awesome. They were leaving the next morning, I think, to go to Paris. They were very cool. So I had to leave with my friend who I was traveling with, and these hippies that were also staying there told us about Chefchaouen, which is this hill town in Morocco. It's really beautiful. And so we thought, okay, and they suggested hitchhiking. Now, I had never done that before. I'm American, so I think I have a specific horror movie view of what hitchhiking might be. So I was a little reticent to try it, but I thought, okay, why not? So I'm trying. So I leave this beautiful house that I'm crashing on in Fez. I'm trying to hitchhike and, waiting for a truck or a van or someone to pick me up. And my shoe breaks. And it is only after my shoe breaks that I come to realize that I don't have my other pairs of shoes. I had one other pair of shoes, and I've left them with this couple, and they're no longer home. They've gone to Paris. So I basically have one shoe, one sandal. The other one broke. And it's sort of getting late and trying to get out of town. And basically hitchhiking is not happening. We actually get one truck that comes up and is like, yeah, we'll take you, but they were going in the opposite direction. And I was like trying to figure out the math, and I chickened out. So a bus comes by, and we decide to get on the bus. My friend and I with one shoe, and we're the only non-Moroccans on this bus, but it's going to a town near Chefchaouen, and we can transfer there. So we're like, okay, great. So we get on, and we get to this town for sort of the stopover, probably around 9 at night. And I think the town is called Meknes, and everything is shut down, but I'm trying to ask people if I can find shoes, since I am barefooted, I'm like trying to, when your sandals break and you're trying to like squeeze the one, you know, between your toes, you're like hanging on. So I was doing that, which was not comfortable and also very embarrassing. So I'm asking people around, and this couple comes out, and the man says, "You need shoes?" And so I'm like, "Yeah, do you know of anywhere?" And he says, "I'll be right back." And he comes back. This is the nicest thing that's ever happened to me. He comes back with all of these shoes from his family. And he's like, "Here, take whatever you need, whatever you want." Which I've never experienced kindness from a stranger like that. I mean, that is beyond. And I was, you know, like overwhelmed with gratitude. The only shoes that really fit me, I have pretty big feet, so the only things that really fit me were other slippers, which were actually the wife in this family's, maybe they were shower slippers. They had like suction cups on the bottom. So, but they were sandals, so I could at least like, I mean, I knew I was probably going to get another pair in the morning or as soon as I could. So I was like, okay, I would love to take these if possible. And I was so grateful. But it was basically like my feet were like hanging off, and every 2 steps I was sort of like having to lift the shoe up very forcefully off the ground. It was definitely more comfortable than not having the one shoe. But it was also like maybe slightly embarrassing, but it was my fault. So I was very grateful. We get to Chefchaouen, which is gorgeous. If you don't know it, it is a town on this hill. All the houses are white and blue, kind of like the blue behind me right now. Just gorgeous. It looks kind of like a Smurf town, but not cartoonish, and stunning. Like the way the sun sort of sets over it is just really beautiful. So we get there in the morning, and I was like, I'm maybe not going to couch surf this time around, given everything that's just happened. So we check into a hostel, and the guy behind the desk is like, "Are you Indian?" And I say, "Yeah." And he says, "I'll be right back." Right? And I'm like, okay, the last time this happened, I got shoes. Wonder what will happen now. And it's probably like 8 in the morning, and I know I'm going to check in, maybe even like take a nap after this overnight ride, and then go and find shoes. And he comes back with this board game, and he says, "Do you know how to play this?" And it is this board game called Carom. That is an Indian board game. I've only seen it like in Indian people's houses in the US and in India. I'd never seen it elsewhere. So it was sort of like, how did you come across this thing? And I think another traveler had gifted it to him, someone from India. And he was really excited to have someone Indian staying at the hostel. So he was like, "Oh my God, we can play. And so it was very exciting, but he needed he's like, "The game's not really working." And I knew it's because you need powder to slick the board. So in my very broken Arabic and a little bit of French I set out to find shoes and baby powder. And that sort of excited me. So instead of napping, I was like, let me just go right out and try and get these things done, and then I can celebrate later. So I went out into the town of in Chefchaouen, and I found sneakers. And finding powder was really hard. I had no idea how to say the word. I'd forgotten. I took French in like middle school and high school, and took Arabic in college, but I was not the best at either. I was not fluent, and also, you know, it's always a little embarrassing to try languages out, which is why it's so hard to learn them. So I was using French sentence structure because it's closer to English, and I kind of like understood it better. And then I would interject the Arabic words I knew. And the only place you can really you can do that in North Africa, essentially, which I was very grateful that I could use like two languages and cobble them together. So I went to a pharmacy and I like had no idea how to say baby powder, and I was looking around and finally I found it. And I had shoes, and I got to go back to this hostel. And, you know, after this sort of like weird, I mean, it wasn't grueling, it was just sort of a series of unfortunate events, but I wound up in this hostel, and there was a deck that overlooked, you know, the hill and the water, or no, there was no water there. It was just a random hilltop, but it was just, the landscape was really beautiful. And I remember it was sort of, the sun was setting and we were playing carom, and it was just a really wonderful way to wrap up the 24 hours that preceded it, which were a little wild. And I found myself playing this Indian board game with a stranger who became a new friend in a very unlikely place to be playing that game. So it was a really special thing that's happened in my life, and I just will always remember that.
So the story you're about to hear is 100% true. It is 100% authentic. And if you ask my mother about this story, she will look at you with a slight side eye like this, and she'll say, I know of no such thing, which is basically code for I did it, but I'm not going to admit to it. So the history of this is, when I was 5 years old, my mom at 29 years old was diagnosed with liver cancer. So my entire life, my mom has been ill with one thing or another: brain surgery, stroke, heart attack, breast cancer, liver cancer, etc. So my family has gotten very used to dealing with emergencies, but this was the first big one when I was 5. And at 5 years old, my mom sat me down and we had to have this conversation about, there's a good chance that mommy might not come back from the hospital. And you're going to have to be a big girl, and you're going to have to take care of your dad. And very heavy conversation at 5 years old, because at 5, I just wanted to watch Jim and the Holograms and play with K-Rares, like in that order. So my mom sits me down and she says, my liver hurts very bad, and they're going to remove a lot of it because I have cancer. And they are saying that this may not be good for us and I may not come back. And I said, well, who's gonna take care of me? And she said, well, your dad will. And then she said, but no matter what, I'm always going to come back for my baby. So my grandmother came in from Illinois to stay with us. She stayed with us so that my dad could go to work and I could still do what a 5-year-old does. And my cousin Lex, who was 4 years older than I, came and stayed with us as well. The day of the surgery was an off day. And I should mind you that the women in my family have this weird mystical thing. They feel when things aren't right. They have this idea when someone is about to pass on. And it's a very bizarre thing. It skipped me. I don't know anything, but everybody else in my family, every other woman in my family has this gift. So I kept asking my grandma, I said, Grandma, is mom going to pass today? And my grandma wouldn't say anything. She said, oh girl, hush, hush, hush. So we leave my mom at the hospital and I go home, and that night I feel very afraid. And I say to my grandma, I said, Grandma, can I sleep in bed with you? I don't want to sleep by myself. And she said, no, you're a big girl. Big girls sleep by themselves. So I got in my bed and Lex came in and she said, I'll stay with you. So the two of us, a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, are in my full-size bed. And in the middle of the night, I wake up and there is a white figure sitting at the end of my bed. Sitting. I could feel the impression in the bed. Like you can see it dip from the person or thing sitting there. And I have a Baptist fit. I wake Lex up. I said, Lex, wake up, wake up. We got to pray. We got spirits in the house. And Lex looks under the blankets like this. And then she looks at me and she says, kick it. Girl, I ain't kicking a ghost. I said, I ain't kicking it. You kick it. She said, well, if I kick the ghost, am I going to go to hell? I said, probably. So she scoots underneath it, and you see her little foot come and just knock the crap out of this ghost. Like, just kicks it. And the thing sits up, and it turns around, and it looks at us. And I scream. But it's, of course, it's that like deep scream where like no sound comes out. You're just pure terrified. And I'm screaming and Lex is like, what happened? What happened? I was like, it's looking at us. It's looking at us. And so Lex looks over at me. She goes, girl, we got to pray. And the thing gets up and it walks over to my side of the bed and it looks down at me. And I can see it. It is a figure. You can kind of see through it a little bit. It's like maybe like dry ice almost, like kind of misty. But you can feel it, and it doesn't feel cold. Like everyone says a ghost feels cold, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels nice, comforting almost, but also scary because we don't need spirits in our house. That's not the house we paid for. So Lex and I pray so hard, and we pray and cry until we pretty much pass out. The next morning I wake up and I go running into the spare bedroom where my grandma was staying. And I said, Grandma, we need to get the preacher here. We have ghosts in this house. And she does the same look that my mom does. She just says, I don't know what you're talking about. I know no such thing. And I said, that's a lie. And you know it's a lie. And she said, when we go to this hospital to see your mama, you better not say anything to her. Don't you worry her with this talk of ghosts and spirits. And don't you do that. I said, yes, ma'am. But we all know I'm going to do it anyway because that's my mom. You're not going to tell me what to not tell my mom. So I go into my mom's hospital room and she gestures for me to crawl into the bed with her. And while I'm in the bed with her, I ask her, I said, did you sleep good? Did they fix you? And she's weak and she says, yeah, I think they fixed me. At the same time, the doctor is talking to my grandmother, my dad, who's been at the hospital all day and all night. And he tells them that my mom had some complications on the table. And I said, Mom, we have ghosts in the house. We have spirits in the house. And I don't know why we have spirits in the house. I said, we didn't do anything to let these spirits in. So I don't know what happened. And she said, what did the spirit look like? And I said, Mom, it was warm and it was misty. And it felt nice. And my mom said, I told you I was not going to leave my baby. The doctor told my mom, the doctor told my dad and my grandma that they lost my mom on the table. They lost her for 20 minutes. And when they revived her, she opened her eyes does not happen in a surgery normally. Like she opened her eyes, like my mom had died. And during that time that she was dead, she came back to make sure I was okay in the night. What's funny about that is if you ask my cousin Lex, she'll pretend like it never happened. She'll say, I don't know what you're talking about. My grandmother, up until her dying day, did the same thing. I know no such thing. So now my mom and I have this weird connection where we know when the other is going to call, we know when anything's going to happen. But that is the time that my mom died on the table, and I think I kind of helped her come back. Thank you.